I guess, what can't a PA do that a doctor can do?
It's kind of
like most times you can do everything, right?
Right. But you don't want to say that because it sounds bad. So the difference is that, am I close enough to this?
Yeah,
that's great.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Stellar.
The difference is that PAs are like mid-level providers. So it's supposed to help decrease the demand for physicians. So in some settings, it means that you'll have, like, for example, in the ER, you might have like those who come in who it's like quicker things. So it's like someone has an infection or they have like elevated blood pressure or something that brings them in, but it's like you can fast track it versus like if someone codes, like they have a heart attack and they're down for the count.
Right.
You usually want the physician there to lead the code. But then certain states have different requirements and certain states are fine with mid-level providers doing that. So,
and depending on where you work, like nurses are trained differently to do different things too, like different floors, like emergency department nurses.
Right.
A lot of times run codes too, because it's like,
right. Because
there's so much going on and everything.
Right. Exactly.
Or it's like 4 a.m.
Right.
Interesting. That's cool.
Yeah. So, but then from an outpatient perspective, which is where I work, I would say it looks very similar. Like I have a physician above me. So for one physician, you can have so many mid-level providers. So either a nurse practitioner or a PA.
Mm-hmm.
And then from the day-to-day, it looks very similar. Like I have my patient caseload. They have their patient caseload. Like I see a patient for the day or patients for the day. I see them, assess them, make diagnoses, prescribe. And
is it a different liability?
It is. Yeah. Yes. And that's like the biggest difference is that more falls on the physician. I'm covered by the physician. In some settings, they'll have to sign off on your notes. Not in all, like I don't have a physician sign off on my notes. But it just depends on the rules of the place you work and the legality of the state and all that kind of stuff. So some states have it that a PA or an NP could run their own clinic without a
have their own practice.
Gotcha.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So while Nate's pouring, welcome to the show, everyone. Nate's antsy to drink coffee tonight. We're recording in the PM because we're playing catch up. But we have a very special guest on today, Abby Bauman.
Woo-hoo.
Welcome to the show.
Thanks.
PA, wife of Bryce Bauman. Shout out to Bryce. I'm trying to think of how long I've known you. I think I met Bryce very shortly after you guys just started dating.
Okay. Probably.
I think.
Yeah.
I think it was like a month or two after that because I think I met Bryce at Let's Fly.
Oh.
I think.
Yeah.
It was one of the Let's Fly with like the first group of Every Heart Boys.
Right.
So that's how long I've known
the
Bryce.
The first group.
Yeah. The OG, the originals. And then you've remained in Bryce's life.
I have. Stuck around.
Abby's from South Carolina. What are you from Hilton Head?
I'm not. I am. So technically I was born in Chicago. And so that's where like family roots are. Like my mom and dad, their families are from Chicago.
Gotcha.
And then we moved around quite a bit. So we were in Pittsburgh for a while. We were in Fort Wayne, Indiana for a while. And then South Carolina for a while.
Gotcha.
So most recently I was in South Carolina.
Nice.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. Yeah, it's gorgeous because we went there for Every Heart. We came down to Christian Renewal.
Yeah.
And shout out to Christian Renewal. They just have such a special place in my heart. Such an amazing week. But so yeah, we're here with Abby. We're going to jump in and hear about all things medicine. Abby's a PA. We're excited to chat about this stuff.
We're drinking decaf.
Because it's 7 p.m. on a Tuesday.
7P, not 7A.
Sure.
That means Amanda's going to work.
Amanda just clocked in.
Yep. And now we're clocking in.
And now we're punching in. Yeah.
The next 12 hours.
So we are drinking decaf from Quickwater. I believe it's Columbia. That's what it said on the bag.
It's good.
I haven't tried it yet. So
Partake.
this is the first time was I telling Joel this? I don't think I've ever had decaf coffee before.
Ever?
Or I may have had it, like a couple sips of it.
Okay.
I don't think I've had a lot of it, and I for sure have never brewed like my own decaf.
Do you feel a little dirty?
I do.
Not the decaf.
I feel weird.
You're defiling your mug by having decaf in it.
Get it out. Get it out. So, yeah.
I bought a bag of decaf coffee because of Nate Chitwood, because he doesn't drink caffeine.
Yep.
And I think I've brewed like one thing of it, and it's just sitting in our cupboard, and I haven't touched it since. I typically drink caffeinated coffee, even if I drink it later.
Right. Right. Yeah. I very rarely, if ever, have I like purposefully gotten decaf, because I usually am done. Like, I usually don't want it like in the PM. Like, I don't have a craving for it. I only crave it in the morning. So,
every once in a while.
Sure.
Like if it's dessert with dessert.
Maybe I will now.
I completely agree.
Yeah. Maybe I'll want more now if I have it.
Especially like with a really rich sweet dessert. Having some
that would be super.
coffee
like
after dinner can make you just lay back and enjoy life.
I'm here for that.
What's your opinion on caffeine?
I love caffeine. I don't think I have.
Like, do you have a medical opinion about caffeine? Your personal opinion, you love it.
My
Okay.
personal opinion, I think that I don't think there's any. I don't know. People go back and forth.
It's conflicted, isn't it?
Yeah, it's one of those things people go back and forth on. I think if you're drinking so much that your heart rate is like out of control and you have no water and you're dehydrated and like your head's spinning all the time, then I think you probably have a problem.
Sounds balanced.
Everything in moderation.
Everything in moderation.
Yeah.
But there's also a lot of statistics, especially, well, I'm saying statistics. I'm assuming there's statistics, but
research.
There's a lot of research, suggesting that especially like black coffee actually has a lot of health benefits. So
yeah, like caffeine actually stimulating certain parts of your brain that it's all, like it's a stimulant, right? And I don't know.
Yeah. No, I've heard some of that too, as well as even just like antioxidants and stuff.
Yes, that's what I was
black
gonna say.
coffee.
Yeah.
So yeah, I've heard that same thing too. Because then it starts getting weird when you put milk and creamer and like all the sugar and stuff into it. Yeah.
Right.
There's nothing wrong with sugar though.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I'm joking. I like to make it weird. What was I going to say?
Sugar, coffee, caffeine, black coffee, lattes, milk.
No, I'm just listening to you. Yeah.
Quickwater.
It's gone. Well, thanks, Steven, for the coffee.
Steven is
always.
awesome. Steven roasts air roast coffee. And you should go buy some.
Quickwater in Rockford.
I feel like I'm just as slap happy now as I would be in the morning.
Yeah, we were talking about that before, that it's going to be like exactly the same. It's not going to be more awake. We're going to be
we're
gonna warm up and we're gonna
sounding tired.
Come back in 20 minutes and then we'll be on something. But yeah, so I just kind of want to hear your story of like getting into PA and just medicine in general. I don't know if Bryce has told me like the full extent, but I'm just curious of like where that passion comes from and like resides from you and how you wound up where you are right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I grew up with a mom who was an ER nurse, and she's still a nurse. She's not in the ER anymore. So I grew up really loving medicine and knowing a lot about the medical field. And then her friends naturally worked in medicine as well. So I think from a young age, and her best friend is a PA. So I think from a pretty young age, she was like, you should be a PA. And I listened to her.
Prophesied.
So yeah. So I was like, yeah, it sounds like a great idea. So
how old were you?
Probably middle school, if that. Elementary school, maybe. Because we were
like, okay.
Yeah.
Sure, sign me up.
I was like, yeah. I was like, you have good advice for the most part. So I'll do it. So that was pretty much my goal, my trajectory. And she always like explained the benefits. So benefits of being a PA, especially as a woman who wants to like have kids, have a family. Not that you can't if you are a physician. It's just a benefit of being a PA that it is less schooling. And with that, then there's also less tied into it, I guess. So
to move around more easily.
You can move around more easily. You can go PRN easier. If you're going to go through the whole process of being a physician, go through residency and fellowship, like at that point you want to work. And so knowing
and
that
you're 30
and you're 30. Yeah. And so knowing that I didn't quite want that level of commitment, but I wanted to be a provider. I saw the benefits of being a PA or a mid-level provider instead. I also got to a point, especially in high school, when it was time to really like go on to pick my major and so forth and start the path. I realized that the only parts of me that wanted to be a physician fully was like an ambitious side of me, but it really wasn't going to change what I was going to do or how I was going to do it. It was simply to prove myself.
Sure.
So
It's an accolade.
Yeah.
Essentially.
Right. Like I did it and then I didn't know if I actually wanted that and I didn't. And I think that's a trap sometimes, you know, like something seems more desirable, but you don't actually want it. It just seems like the better option. So then end of high school comes around. I was supposed to go to a local school in Fort Wayne at the time, and I was going to save money. I had a very good plan. I was going to get like contact hours like in high school still, and then I was going to go to this local school and it was going to be paid for because I had a great GPA. And then I like bombed the SAT and I just couldn't do it. Like I fell asleep during one of them because I was sick. Then I like put all the wrong answers. So just terrible. Wasn't working out. So
are you typically a good test taker?
Yeah, for the most part. Not for like standardized tests necessarily, but I should have been able to do like an average job and I like didn't.
Oh man.
So
Dang.
So but it was good because I ended up going and I did YWAM for a year because of that. Because I was like, well, why am I going right away if I'm not getting a scholarship anyway?
Yeah, sure.
So I went and I did YWAM for a year. And while I was there, I really wanted to be like a full-time missionary. I wanted to be full-time on staff for ministry. I wanted to go to one of the ministry schools. Like I was just for the first time learning about all these schools throughout the US. Like wanted to travel. I wanted to do something and I wanted to serve the Lord. And then on my time back, I think I like presented all of these things to him and he wasn't giving me clarity. And he was like, the only option that you haven't released to me is going back to school. And so I was like, well, that's because I don't want to go to school. So I can't. And as soon as I kind of just gave that door back, or at least gave him the option of like, is this what you're asking me? Like allowed him to speak about it. He made it very clear that he wanted to redeem school for me. And like growing up, I was type A. I mean, still am kind of, but like I was very anxious about school, a lot of pressure, a lot of competition. So I was scared to go on to something that was going to be so competitive and difficult.
Much grander scale than just high school.
Right, exactly. So fast forward, ended up going to school, started to go an OT route for a while for occupational therapy. So a lot of my undergrad classes were actually occupational
therapy. So is Amanda. She
really?
had pre-OT and then she did second degree nursing.
Okay. So I was an OTA from undergrad because we had like a 4-year program for it.
Nice.
But halfway through, I realized that I wanted to be a PA. Like I loved therapy and I could have lived a very happy life as an OT. I loved the intentionality of it, the holistic approach of it. I love that it looks at people's actual function, not just like saving their life, but actually like making sure they
quality of life.
That they actually enjoy it. Like you had a stroke and you're alive still, but can you do anything? Like anything meaningful? So I loved that component of my training. I just cared so much about the why, like the diagnosis, like what happened to you, like metabolically, what happened in your body. So switched to PA, kind of double majored, and then ended up getting into PA school in South Carolina. Whole time of which I thought I was going to be an ER PA. That was what I saw the most because my mom worked in the ER. Her best friend worked in the ER. I thought the ER was awesome because it was like crazy things are happening.
Yeah, it's where like it's like the pinnacle. Like everyone's like always talking about the ER. Like when you are in the medical sphere, like, everyone's like, "Oh, are you gonna do that?" It's kind of like
because you have the
adrenaline junkie.
Yeah,
kind of thing.
Exactly. You have the most like crazy stories. Like you see the most ridiculous things, and the reality of it is you're seeing ridiculous, crazy, terrible things. So there's like a negative to it.
Kind of traumatic.
Yeah, it's traumatic. Like you have to process it, or you just don't process it. But either you're really sad and it really takes a toll on you, or you pretend it doesn't and it still takes a toll on you. So anyway, so I pictured myself doing that. I pictured myself doing that so that I could use it for ministry, like for missions work. So the whole time I was like, I want to go to developing nations and have the skills from an ER to do more of the emergent, urgent care for those who don't have access to healthcare. So that was my vision the whole time. I got through school, did all my rotations, still absolutely loved the ER, and I actually hated family medicine. Like anything outpatient, I was like, it's very boring. It was like everyone has blood pressure issues, everyone has like sugar issues, like it was just boring. And so in my head, that was the route I was going. Started to apply for jobs, and there just weren't many available for in the ER, like at the time that I was applying. And I saw a job pop up for functional medicine. And I knew very little about functional medicine aside from the fact that I grew up in a Christian community. So because of that, I don't know why these two live together, but I feel like in Christian communities, you always have like, especially like trendy moms, and they're like granola-y and like, you know, kind of like crunchy.
All organic.
Yeah,
like,
organic. And they don't like certain things that are in basic like Western medicine. And I grew up with it enough to know that it existed. And I grew up with it enough to know that there was conflict between, I grew up in a medical house, and I knew that they didn't always get along with each other. And I knew that I thought one thing, but I also knew that there seemed to be some validity on the other side. And I recognized that Western medicine, or at least my training, didn't answer their questions because they would be like, what about like these vitamins or these supplements or organic? Like, what about it? And I learned nothing about that in school, and I knew nothing about it from a medical perspective. I even had a rotation, I think, and a patient came in and they're like, can you check my vitamin D? And he was like, no. He was like, what was that going to do for you? Like, that doesn't matter. And now I know that vitamin D is very important, and I check it on every patient. So I saw this job pop up for functional medicine. I recognized that I had absolutely no training in it, nor did I like know anything in terms of treating a patient, but I knew that there was a whole like side of medicine that I wanted to know about that I didn't have answers for. So if I could have an opportunity to be trained, I think it would make me a better provider, because either I see that this stuff doesn't work,
right,
or I realize that it actually does work.
What are you afraid of?
Yeah.
Like, what do you have to lose?
Right.
You only have to gain.
Right. Exactly. So
is that your current job?
And that's where I'm at now.
Gotcha.
So, yep. So I saw the functional medicine job. I decided to apply for it. And in the midst of even applying for it, I realized like how exciting it kind of was. Because again, like I said, it was an opportunity to learn things that I had questions of, that I believed in, but I also didn't know what it was enough to even like know if it was valid or to know if I should believe in it. And then having the OT background, I was used to the concept, although it's a different approach, but used to the concept of looking at a patient holistically and looking at a patient from like attainable goals, sustainable goals, like what's important to them. Like how does one thing impact a different thing, instead of being so focused on like your blood pressure. So we're only gonna look at your blood pressure,
right?
That kind of thing.
Well, sometimes in like therapy, it's not a physical issue like that, right? Like sometimes it's, or like it doesn't show up on like typical tests, right? Like that's really interesting. I never thought about that transition from like your schooling as pre-OT and then like going into that, how that connection would be made.
Yeah.
It's something that, and a lot of this language I've adopted just from conversations with you and Amanda, but one of the things that I really kind of latched onto in hearing that you were going this route is like kind of the idea that like a lot of people don't really like think for themselves when it comes to medicine.
Oh, my doctor said this.
Yeah.
Like,
right.
I'll do it. Like,
which for the most part is like good advice.
Like you want to trust your doctor, right? And you should probably. But like, again, that idea of like thinking for yourself, like I even heard a John Mark podcast thing that he was like, if something's like up with you, even like, even if it's like burnout or something like that, like start with the body, like start with sleep, like start with gut health, like, and that's like rudimentary stuff, but that same concept, like where you're at, where it's like, how about we check these other things and not just prescribe you something that is supposed to fix it, and maybe it will, maybe it won't,
or something.
Yeah.
Right.
And then make a bunch of other like compound side effects on top of it or something. So.
Right.
Then you're taking a medication to like cover the side effect of a different
medication.
It's just goes
Right.
downhill. Did you find that there was a lot of like stigma towards, and like kind of, I feel like, and I didn't go to medical school, but I was married to Amanda when she was going like through school, and like it seemed like from overhearing lectures and like kind of the secular view of like holistic medicine, there are very secular holistic, advocates, but in the same sense, sometimes it was like viewed as superstition or like that's not based in research-based practice is like a buzzword, like really, so like there's no studies that show that that's actually effective. That's just an old wives' tale or like whatever those things are. And it's kind of hilarious how like most times that people write off those things, like a study will come out in 10 years that like actually proves that that's valid.
Right.
So I don't know if you experienced that at all, like as you were doing.
So I would say that there was some stigma I had to jump over, even in myself, because like I said, I grew up with a medical household. So, and I always knew of the other side. So I felt like almost defensive of the medical part. Plus you go to school for so long, and I was a PA, or I am a PA. So I went for my undergrad and then my master's. But if I had gone even longer than that, like let's say you do 4 years of medical school and then you do 4 years of residency and even potentially go on, like at that point you're very, very committed. So there's like some level of defense towards specifically what you've been taught. And that's like, and you're like, you are proud of yourself and you know this information because you've been taught it. And
spent hours memorizing it.
Right. And you can explain such complex processes. So you're like, don't even talk to me until you can explain this process.
It's almost like going back on all these things that you spent so much time on.
Right. So it feels like you're like,
contradiction.
Yes.
Yeah.
You feel like you're contradicting it. And it's scary because you are used, like you want there's policy, like medicine is policy.
Right.
So it's like you have an algorithm and you look at a patient and you're like, okay, you meet A, B, and C. Like it's literally a picture. And it's like, yes, no, yes. And it follows you to what you should do. And the danger of that is we treat everyone the same and don't go beyond the algorithm. But then from a provider perspective, it feels safe because you're like, well, if something goes wrong, if something goes wrong, I have something to.
We did the standard practice.
Yes,
so you
exactly.
can't get sued or something.
Exactly. Like you can't get mad at me because I did
thing.
what I was supposed to do.
Yeah.
Right. And so I was scared that I would be put in positions where I had to do something that I felt like was wrong.
Off the books or whatever.
Like too off the books, too dangerous. And then someone would die on my behalf. And so that was like a self-stigma that I was scared of. I think telling other people about the job, I was actually shocked how many people were super excited about it. I think that our generation is like, I think we're hungry to question everything. Like, I think that's obvious, so we don't want to.
Postmodernism.
Yeah. Like, so we question everything that's been taught to us. Like, you tell me to do this, I'm going to ask why, or I'm going to say no, because, you just told me. So, I think that a lot of people are like, we see that there's validity behind natural routes. So a lot of people felt like this is an emerging practice and that there's like a lot of interest in it. So I would say there was some really good encouragement. And then there were some people who I think were like probably just in medicine for so long. And they're like, oh no, you're going with some quacks.
Going crazy.
Yeah. Right. So
you just like people come in and you're just like mashing herbs in a bowl.
Right.
Welcome. Sit down. Sit down.
Come on in. Like incense burning. Like
Right. And I think the thought was that I would just be like full blown, not paying attention to like their medical need and just like giving them something random with hopes that it would work.
Right.
And
fingers crossed.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And like, let's ignore that you're like your heart failure and let's see if this works.
Yeah. Right.
And very quickly, what I realized is that I've learned some better pathophysiology, like through the functional world than I even learned like in like PA school.
What is pathophysiology?
So I hope I get the definition right, but essentially,
sorry,
we'll put it on screen
for the video guys who are listening.
Right. So it's essentially explains what's going on in like metabolically, like in the body, what's happening like on a cellular level, what's happening on a system level that causes like a disease. So like diabetes is the result of insulin resistance. So then you have elevated levels of glucose.
The cause of issues.
Yeah. So it's like explaining the body, like the mechanics of the body, and then what's going wrong in the body to cause the disease. So that's, yeah.
So you got like better at diagnosing things.
Yeah.
Like at truly what the
Right.
problem was.
Like actually,
in the body.
like actually understanding what's going wrong, or even just actually understanding how the body works, like on a chemical level, like on a metabolic, like mitochondria level, like what's happening.
And that was something that was never covered to the same depth.
Yes, not to the same depth, or not to, I feel like functional medicine cares so much about it that they pay such close attention to it, and they have to be able to explain it well. So it's just more relevant.
Sure.
And because of that, I can explain diseases way better. Like the same disease that I was talking about before, but I actually know what's going on.
And instead of being like that disease equals this treatment.
Yes, right. Because before it was like, and if you had asked my old self, I would have said that I was doing that before. Like I would have said, of course I'm thinking through the cause. Like I would have answered that way because I could explain what was happening, but I wasn't actually thinking through, well, really what is like the origin of it? Like why did it truly start? Like what's really happening on like a detailed level?
Does that mean that you're going like maybe one step earlier in the process of why this disease like came to begin in the first place? Not just that it's here and we need to treat it.
Right.
Like why is it here and what is agitating it, or how can we curb it like at its source?
Right. That's why a lot of functional medicine providers will say, like how they'll describe it is that you're treating like upstream. So like you could keep working at the end of the river, creek, whatever. Like you could work on that end of whatever is happening down there, or you could stop it upstream and then you don't even have all of these runoffs.
It's like a Band-Aid or like putting a dam at the end versus like controlling the flow like way upstream. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you find that like the cases that you're seeing your patients, are they often like more simple like issues, or are they still just as complex as what you're facing like before?
They're way more complex. Are
they people that like maybe have been at their wits end with like traditional diagnoses and stuff like that?
Yeah.
Diagnoses?
Diagnosi? I would say
apostrophe.
It is diagnoses further.
Okay. I thought so.
But they're way more complex because either A, there's someone who's literally so many times, like every day I see a patient who's like crying because they're like, everyone else has told me I'm crazy. Like they've had no ideas for me. They think I'm just making it up. So there's those patients. There's the patients who are just very like proactive. Like they just want to be healthy. Like they see vision for it. So they're like, I'm okay right now. Like, how do I stay okay? And then you have some patients who kind of just show up and they want a different answer, but they don't really know what they're like looking for. And then they come with like one complaint and then I pull like 16 things out from them.
They're more chill and they don't really realize the extent of their issue.
Right.
My knee kind of hurts. It's because of this.
Right. Yeah. So it's a good variety, but I will say that it's a lot of people who've been hurt by like medical field and have been sent from one specialty to the next specialty and don't feel like they've actually been heard or that anyone took time to really listen to them or even believe them most of the time.
Right.
That's interesting because I feel like probably you ask someone who doesn't have an understanding of that and they would probably assume that you would be treating more simple issues like, holistically. So they probably just like giving you like emergency when you have a cold or something like vitamins versus like opioids. I don't know. Like you think of you know, those types of things. And then not that you wouldn't help those people, like you said, the preventative type of practice. But
I think the nature of functional medicine is that it looks at every system of your body and recognizes that they interact with each other. And so that makes it more complex because from a traditional side of things, again, like I'm going to schedule you a 15-minute appointment and we're only going to look at your blood sugar levels.
It's siloed into.
Exactly. Yeah. And that's like all we'll talk about. And so
based off of the medical history.
Yes.
Like based off of like what has already happened in their life.
Right.
So we better check on this.
Right. So it's like I checked your standard blood work. I looked at your blood sugar was too high. And so now you're diabetic and I'm going to put you on a medicine and I'll see you in 3 months. and I'll have a 15-minute appointment with you, and I'll just, again, check your blood sugar. And
see if it got better.
And see if it got better. And then I'll ask if you changed your diet, and you probably didn't, because it's very confusing to just be generically told eat better and like cut out sugar. But you're like, how do I do that?
Yeah.
And
the lifetime of habits. And
yeah, right. And it's like hard without clear, like
practical, like do this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Practical examples. And some people don't have the means to change some of like their, diet and stuff. So that's what like a traditional like family medicine type thing would look like, is you have 15 minutes with a patient and you just talk about one thing, versus when you're trying to do a holistic approach, you're like, okay, well, like you're just looking like, you're like, okay, your insulin resistance is high or your blood sugar is high. So cardiometabolically, what's like going on? How is that affecting your uric acid? How is it affecting like your blood pressure? How is it affecting your like GI system? How is it affecting your mental health? Like, how is it affecting your like testosterone, estrogen levels? So next thing you know, you're talking about like 12 different things and more.
But it's because they all spill over into each other.
Because they all interact, because your body's connected.
Right. A thing that Amanda's been taught, and this is probably specifically in nursing school as well, as she mentioned, like, and this is, again, doctors do amazing things, and this is not at all slam on traditional doctors, but nurses are typically the ones who notice things that are more holistically wrong because they're spending the time with the patients, right? The doctor comes in, they're there for 10 minutes, and then they have like 100 patients. Like, it's understandable.
I mean, they're for real the end of the line. Yeah. Really.
Yeah. So like when you're a nurse and what they're teaching, and it's probably more so today in nursing school than it was typical, but they're saying like, if the patient says there's something wrong or something seems wrong, there is something wrong. Like, it's not, don't ignore it because it doesn't make sense with like what's supposed to be wrong, or like the doctor said it's fine or something. If like, or if somebody they know, like a loved one's like, hey, something's wrong with them and we don't know what, take it seriously, because a lot of times there's like fatalities because you didn't take it seriously and they were having a heart attack or something that like it was just showing weird. So that's where my mind goes, like just hearing what Amanda's talking about. She's like, yeah, it's kind of interesting to be like spending more time with patients. You have like a typical, like, what's your like patient load, I guess, like on a typical shift? Like, how many patients are you seeing?
I see like 6 a day. Okay. I would say. So I'm like,
that's like pretty low, right? For like a PA.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. It's like super low.
Yeah. Like I would say, and I'll probably see more, but again, with the nature of how comprehensive we're supposed to be. And then I'm like a couple months in for this like specific practice. So they like have given me grace for like how many I have to get through, and they give me more time for like a patient, but I get about an hour with a patient versus like traditional, you have 15 minutes with a patient. So you could see 4 in the time that I'm seeing 1.
Right.
So yeah.
Is it more expensive?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like insurance does not care about preventative medicine. So they won't cover like preventative tests or it's just kind of how the system's set up.
My mom started doing some meeting with a holistic doctor, even just like Zoom stuff. And it's kind of crazy. Like it's good. Like she's seen drastic improvements of things that, again, like we were saying, like doctors would say this and just do this, but started doing other treatments and it's like night and day difference. Yeah. It's crazy.
Well, like some standard treatments are written by pharmaceutical companies. Is that not true? Like they're like, basically this is how we think it's most effective to treat this disease, and they give recommendations, which then become standard practices, and the end goal is to sell their product or
money in their pockets.
Or something.
Right. And they'll like fund research studies. Yeah. So it's like, oh,
it's research based.
It's they're like, oh, it's research based, but it's like, okay, but the people who funded it are also going to benefit from said results. Yeah, there's a lot of
and again, obviously this isn't like a general for everybody, but it's just more the system of American healthcare. And
right.
Obviously, the insurance thing is a whole nother conversation.
Right.
That everybody has a variety of opinions on. But
What's interesting is, and this is something I didn't really know about until recently. So I learned that like supplement companies, especially certain big ones, actually do have strict like standards. So like one of the misconceptions is that it's not
unregulated.
It's not FDA regulated, so you don't know what you're getting. And for some scenarios, that's true. But if you're a big enough company producing enough supplements and enough vitamins and such, then the FDA has to regulate you still. They still have like requirements that they have to come in and check. So like certain big companies will still have all of those checks and balances in place. And they actually have like third-party testing. Like they're these huge research-based like institutions who have very, very good research. But what's interesting is that there's like a legal thing.
They can't claim certain things, right?
Well, yeah, they can't. If you produce the supplement, you can't advertise the supplement. So you can't explain when you should or should not use it. Like you can't teach on the supplement.
Interesting.
Because it's a conflict of interest, which it is.
Which you can for traditional medicine.
But then traditional medicine, that same conflict of interest is fine.
Mm-hmm.
So
advertising for medications is illegal in a lot of countries too.
It should be.
And it's not in America. And also, this is from a film perspective, being filmmakers, like pharmaceutical companies are like, and car companies are the majority of like budgets for commercials. Yeah. It's like overwhelmingly though, it's medicine.
Yeah.
So like when you like watch commercials count how many like medicine commercials there are.
Yeah.
They spend the most out of any industry in America.
I feel like that's also where the stereotypical like side effects, and then it's said like really fast. Like,
and it's like, it's also like advertise. So I would have like moral issues with like making a commercial for a pharmaceutical company. But like when you watch even the visuals, it's like, I don't mean to like ruin commercials for you forever, but pay attention to like the colors that the people are wearing. Like it's usually like the brand color. Pay attention to what they're doing. It's always like the same thing. It's always like prosperous life. It starts off really pale and dark.
Right.
By the end, like it's a super vibrant, colorful family that's like going through the park, recreating. They're not like at job or stressed. It's like this.
They're going to a theme park or something.
Yeah, and it's like and then the medicine's like something completely has nothing to do with the visuals of the medicine at all.
Yeah.
It's just a narration, and then like obviously the side effects. No guarantee. And then it's like this is for, you know, if you have an upset stomach, and then side effects like may cause upset stomach. Like it's just really weird. And of course medicine's complex, but
right.
It's weird to have advertising for something that like if it's really the best thing you should be taking, why shouldn't everybody be using it? Like why do we advertise? Or I guess because then you ask your doctor about it, right? They would say, ask your doctor about X, Y, or Z. And then the doctor's like, people are asking and we can sell this. And like,
to see if it's right for you.
Yeah.
Yep.
And that's it.
Yeah.
And rant.
Slippery guy.
No, I think I've gotten more sensitive to it. I would say like, even I think it's just manipulative.
Yeah.
Because I was watching one the other day and I can't even tell you what medication it was. It was a biologic, and which is like a type of medication. And the commercial was something of like, it was like a mom who had some chronic thing. I can't remember which one it was, probably going to die is what they were suggesting. And like her daughter's playing soccer and they're like, don't you want to see your kid?
Oh yeah.
And it was
the
like,
emotional appeal.
Yeah. It's like, of course they want to see their kid. And now you have these people who are on the couch, desperate, like scared, sad, have a bad diagnosis.
The commercial said, this is what I would get.
Yeah. And all you're doing is playing on people's like
fear
because like, and their poor circumstances. Like
that's the biggest motivator is fear.
Right. So it's just like, and like you said, most of the medications, specifically these, like they cause like immunosuppression, like immunosuppressant. So it reduces your immune system. So you're like way more exposed to all these like bad like things. And it's like a great idea. Like it's an attempt if you're desperate and if you can't get control over it. But it's so sad that they can play off of people's desperation.
Right.
So.
Right.
Yeah. And I'm not at all like anti-medicine, but I've actually probably become a little more skeptical of like general medicine, just learning more about what it really is. And I tend to think for myself, you know, like in everything, I tend to be a skeptic. So
you are.
I like questioning people and authority, and I naturally do that. But I definitely like even like getting a second opinion and thinking about what that means for people. And sometimes that saves people's lives. It's like they just went to the doctor that they went to growing up because that's just what they did. And then, you know, they not to say all doctors are negligent, like, but I feel like a lot of people don't feel like their doctor actually listens to them or like sees them or, you know, I don't know. I don't think that's like an uncommon experience. It's just like, I don't even know my doctor's name. Like half like people
Right.
it's like I'd have to look it up.
Right.
Versus like having a relationship.
I think that's kind of where I wanted to transition to next, because it is the fact that you get to spend 1 hour with someone in the time of potentially seeing 4. It shows that you care way more about the actual person. And I think most doctors probably do care, but I think it's way easier to see them as just filling a role and just checking a box and doing their job, versus you're building a relationship with these people over this time. You're caring about, again, like
you don't have time to.
The root causes. Exactly. It's not structured that way versus this is. And in that same breath, like, this is a broad question, so take it wherever you want, but, how have you seen, or maybe like learned more about the Lord and through all of this, but also like see what he's doing, through this, learning more about the body and like these root causes, like how has, like, going from YWAM transitioning into this, obviously I know your heart and you have a huge heart for the Lord and for ministry and for caring for people in the first place. How have you just experienced God in what you're doing on this other side of medicine?
Yeah. I would say, well, first and foremost, kind of to talk about what you said for a second, what you were mentioning as well about, I think, providers all go into it. Well, not all providers.
Right. We're speaking in generalities.
Yeah.
Of course, there are exceptions.
Right. But most providers do care about their patients. Most providers don't simply see you as like just a statistic. However, when you're structured, like you were saying, of like you have to see so many patients.
There's no capacity for people to,
Right. And it's like, so if you have to only spend 15 minutes with someone, how could you possibly listen about like this chronic twitch they've been experiencing for 32 years? You know, like you don't have time to even consider that stuff. So part of it is, you know, is the structure.
How are your vitals? What's your blood pressure? Like the things that keep your heart pumping are like number one.
Right. And so I think first and foremost, I've just been lucky to be in this position that it's like I get to spend an hour because who gets to do that?
It's kind of a privilege.
Yeah, it is a privilege to be able to sit down and actually listen to them and actually like let them express like their frustrations or express like what they're experiencing, or
have someone listen to them that genuinely, you know, wants to go a little bit deeper than just like, here, let's just do this.
Right. And I wouldn't have known how to do that without being in this position. Like, even if my heart had been to like listen to someone or like hear about it, I knew nothing of this kind of medicine because it wasn't taught to me. So I've been given this opportunity to work under providers who know so much and have devoted so much of their life to this kind of research that I can like just glean off of. And all of a sudden I have like references. Like I also have like access to research articles, like access to statistics and stuff that actually document and prove things with someone alongside of me to like teach me and like tell me what to do and tell me like, oh, if they express something like this in the midst of you like poking questions, like we have an answer for it. Like we do have something to do for it.
That's cool.
So I would say it was a learning curve for me initially, because like I said, I went into school thinking that I want to be a missionary. Like I want to go to the broken. I want to see those who are forgotten. Like I want to see those who are overlooked and hurting and hopeless. And I want to love them and serve them in this capacity. So in my head, I was like, that is orphans. That's like underserved like countries. And that means I have to do urgent care, ER medicine. Like I have to do the quick things that can save their life whenever they don't have access to their healthcare.
Which would, I guess, take precedence in that situation.
In that scenario,
that's not like wrong. That's not wrong. Like,
right. Oh, right. Yeah. Exactly. Because it's like, I can't talk about your like mold exposure because you don't have water. Like you don't have like basic nutrient, you know?
Yeah.
Like you don't.
That is the right priorities.
Right. Right. Exactly. So in my head, I was like, that's clearly how the Lord wants to use me. So it's just a matter of how do I make it happen? And like, so then in my head, I would dream up all these things, still things that I would love to do, but like mercy ships or like YWAM ships that like are medicine and you go to these like remote like villages. Or I was like, I'll start like a clinic in like a country or whatever. Or I'll work for a free like health clinic in the US for now and get a basis. So in my head, it was so clear. I was like, that is where Jesus is within medicine. Like clearly that's where he is. And like I said, the doors weren't opening in that way. And then suddenly this door flung wide open. And in my head, I was like, I don't know how I'm going to see the Lord move in something that is like basic, like family practice that is paid out of pocket. So therefore your client population is going to be primarily upper class or someone who can at least figure out the finances, which means they have finances to begin with to pay for something like this. So in my head, I was like, I don't know if
Jesus isn't there.
Yeah, right. I was like, clearly this isn't where Jesus would be. Not really, but I was like, I struggled with those thoughts. And then quickly I like met this practice, spent some time at this practice, realized that the doctor who I'm working under fears the Lord greatly, has a dependence upon the Lord and owns her own practice. So therefore, she is able to implement however it is that she wants or sees fit. And so I realized that she practices from a place of compassion, and she practices from a place of like fearing the Lord and caring about people because like the Lord cares about them, and also even believing in things like healing and like supernatural like intervention for the body and for medicine and illness. And so I was like, well, this could be a good route to go because I want to see the Lord break out in the medical field. And I want healthcare providers and I want nurses and all the help staff to like be on fire for the Lord, because like that's where we should be on fire for the Lord, because we're serving people there. But that's not what medicine breeds. Medicine breeds anger, bitterness, like gossip, tearing apart. Like it's you bond over trauma, you bond over complaint, you bond over being poorly treated.
Very negative things.
So negative. You hate patients.
Right.
So in my head, I was like, I have to be so strong in the Lord that if I go to these environments, like we're going to see revival because they like, start with me, Lord, like I will be on fire for you. And I'll go to like these places where people are so negative. And although that's still true, the Lord was like, but also what if like I equip you in a place where people already like the people who are above you, who have established the foundations, already do believe in the Lord and will let you learn and grow in what it looks like to be a provider who fears the Lord and is active in it. And I realized that maybe that would be a good step. Like maybe that would be a good place to go. Instead of it being me against opposition, it would be me learning to grow already with like an environment that is willing to let me grow.
And with mentors. Yeah.
And with mentors. Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, I realized that I think like from a humbled perspective, I don't think I could have taken it to just be by myself in like in an environment like most medical environments are. Like I know myself too much to know, like I probably would have grown bitter pretty quickly, like against patients and like fallen into complaint pretty quickly.
Well, like, you know, in a hospital environment, it's like, here's the amount of patients you have to see, go.
Right.
And then there's little support beyond that.
Right. And sometimes people are nasty to you. And then like in the ER and people will say this, like people will say this when you work in the ER. And my mom said this, like you start hating people because you're cynical too. Yeah. You're cynical. Yeah. You make jokes about things that are terrible. Like, because you have to, because how else do you process it? And how else do you process people like yelling at you all the time? Like, how do you process the, like, you know, like the darkness that you see there? So you turn on people and, yeah.
That's interesting. One thing I noticed about what you said was that like, you felt like you had to go and make this happen. Like that line kind of stuck out to me. It's like the Lord like put this on my heart, so then I had to go and make it happen.
Right.
Where like that's always like how we feel is like, all right, like the Lord is just waiting for me. Like, of course, action is a part of it.
Right.
But I think true reliance on the Lord is like you saw that the doors were closed. And you're like, okay, well, like this isn't what I expected, and I'm gonna like take a chance and go through the open door I didn't expect. I didn't expect to see the Lord come through that way. And to be honest, like we're like we often don't expect what the Lord is really wanting to do in our lives. Like, that's why we're not God. Right. if we could guess what he was doing, then like we would be God. So I think it's interesting. And I think that's worth noting, is that not only in medicine, but in anything, that like when we have such a plan for what we're going to do, even if good intentions, even if it's like, I'm going to go serve the lost and the broken, and like having a fire for that is not bad in any way, but putting the blinders on and doing what you think you should be doing to accomplish that is wrong, because that's not actually like listening to what the Lord's doing, right? And what he wants to use your passion for.
Absolutely. I think it's cool too, just like you said, to have mentors in that. Like, we're blessed to have like some mentors like in the film industry that are believers as well. And like, film sets can be the same way, very cynical, very ego driven. It's more ego than just like negativity, but it can be a very tough spot. And I don't know if I could, like, I never would have like picked to be in this industry by myself had I not seen a way to do it that was different, that was swimming upstream in the essence of serving people on set, like going above and beyond like what you normally do, instead of like something that's so boxed in, that's so, again, like very ego driven, where it's like, I know I'm good at my job, like hire me and pay me money. But like, that's like taking the opposite perspective of that. And we've kind of like adopted that and ran with it. But I feel the same about the film industry too. So
like, how can I best serve the person that's in front of me with what God's blessed me with? Exactly.
Because I was even just thinking about that as you were talking about the ER, of like, I could not like do well in that.
I wouldn't either.
I don't know how long I could do that.
I am not patient enough.
A day, but I also just don't like people yelling at me.
Like, you don't like loud noises.
I'm more sensitive in that light, and I couldn't handle that. So to have that thick skin, I was also thinking about people who are emergency, like first responders.
Yeah.
And I've heard some crazy stories from people who are traumatized, either treated poorly, but also like they respond to something and it's like a little kid and like this, that, and it's like, I don't know, like if you're doing that day in and day out, it's only a matter of time until your brain and body, like I think, can't handle that anymore. And you have many years of processing to go back and like figure out, like that's so heavy. But
I feel like there's a temptation sometimes for things, at least for me. I can't say this for every personality, but I would say that there's sometimes a temptation that if I'm going to like follow the Lord, I want it to be like big and radical, and and that means it's going to have to be like hard. Right. And I'm going to have, it's
a big grand adventure.
Right. Yeah. And it is going to be hard, but like sometimes so in my head, again, it was like, I have to take on this thing and it's going to be hard and I'm going to have to like do it alone. And I actually think Stephanie Gretzinger said this once in a sermon a long time ago, but sometimes it's like how she said it was like, we like hear the call of the Lord and we like catch a glimpse of it. Like we catch a glimpse of the prophecy. We catch a glimpse of the vision and we like run at it like with our sword. And then like the Lord's like, but like you can bring people with you. Like you don't have to just be like alone in it. And I think that it seemed more righteous in my head of like, because this is something I do believe in. Like I want the medical field to be like set on fire and awakened. But I was like, I want all of it. Like if you're coming into the ER, I want you to be met by the love of Jesus. Like if you're like in like an acute setting, if you're inpatient, I want it to be like on fire enough that like your nurses are like praying for you, that they're believing for like in healing, that they like are concerned about the Lord's like perspective on your life. So I do want that revival, but I think I caught the glimpse of it and I'm like, I have like you said, like I have to do it, but I'm going to run and it's going to like, I'm alone. So like I'm vulnerable and like I could fall, but I'm just going to do it. And I realized that there's actually like some maturity, I think, in the faith to be like, actually, I need people with me. And maybe it's okay to like sit in a season where mentors are going to shape you and strengthen you. So that way, whenever you step into an environment like that, you're not going to crumble, so fall with the enemy's resistance.
Well, like you're basically a sheep who's separating yourself intentionally, so that you're vulnerable.
Right.
And then that's when like you're preyed upon. This is so funny how like themes just come up. That's so the Spirit, but like we've been talking a lot about this idea of quiet steadfastness in faith, and the contrast to like this, and not that there's not times to be bold and risky. I'm a risky person. I'm all for like taking risks. But what's harder for me is walking with the Lord quietly and steadfast, not worrying about like, I guess like being the protagonist in that story. The main character. Like when you're running off to do it, you're envisioning like a Lord of the Rings scene where there's like some like hero charging through battle to defeat Satan ourselves. Like that's like, I feel like that's how prideful we can get, where we think that we're like we're going to go defeat Satan. And like, of course we're workers in God's kingdom, and like we're soldiers. Like we need to fight the spiritual battle, but we're not like leading the charge. We're just like a part of it. We're called to join in on the charge that's already happening. And like, I think like it's such a, and that's like when I think of like, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. Like that removes the yoke off of my own shoulders to be the one who has to like be the hero.
Pioneer.
Yeah. Blaze the trail, like be the first one to go.
Right.
And not to say that there aren't like callings like that. There's not a time to step out when it's uncomfortable, or that comfort is what that means. In some sense, like I'm more comfortable being like risk taker and like trusting myself and doing those things because I like to be in control, and I'm an achiever, and I'm strategic, and I want to figure it all out and like have a good plan and then go do it. It's harder for me to sit and like Sabbath and like be like, Lord, I just trust you to accomplish what you're doing.
I think about
be who you meant me to be.
Absolutely. I think about Paul's words too. That's like, work with your hands and live a quiet life. Just what does that mean? More so like pondering that of like, what does a quiet life mean when we're talking about these big grand things and initiatives?
Mind your own business is part of that same. He says, mind your own business.
Yeah. Yeah. And do like diligent work where it's like, we're not really in the film industry to like blow up and like do this crazy thing and like have our names known for fame or clout, like whatever.
IG followers or
like,
whatever.
Yeah. And then coming back to like quiet steadfastness, I think another way to say that, that I've heard before is like radical ordinary obedience.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that's it. I think a lot of it too that we kind of miss, and this is the big C church as a whole, is like self-denial and like dying to yourself. Like that's a part of your story. Like you had to die to yourself and like let those things go for the Lord to open this door.
Yeah, you had to say no to ER and like that vision.
And the things that, your vision, like Abby's vision wasn't the Lord's vision for that thing specifically, you know? And so it was dying to yourself and those desires and passions and wants.
Right.
And then how cool is it to have a newfound passion for something that you didn't even realize was there until the Lord like brought you into it. You know?
And I think it's funny because like I wanted to go to the hopeless. Like I wanted to go to those who were overlooked, who were passed by, who felt unseen. And again, so in my head, I was like, that's clearly orphans. Like I was like, that's clearly a very specific population. And then next thing I know, the Lord takes me to a spot where I'm daily with patients crying because they feel completely hopeless. Like they feel like they're going to be suffering for the rest of their life. And they feel like no one's listened to them. And sometimes it's true diagnoses of like cancer that they've like exhausted their options. And sometimes it's intense things actually. And I get to sit down and truly just like sit with them and listen to them and like tell them. I even get to tell them this frequently, and it's a line I like to use, but I'm like committed to figure it out. So if your situation's like abstract, and if we throw everything we have at it and we can't figure it out, then we just have to cast a wider net. And like, I'm not going to go anywhere to change it because I believe you. So as long as you also don't lose faith and stamina, like I'm going to be here to encourage you. And
how refreshing would that be
to hear from
when you're at like your end of I've tried everything no one is listening, like how refreshing must that feel, you know? Like,
well, it encourages them to fight too,
Yeah.
which is a big deal.
Yeah.
Right. Of that, just like the concept of, well, then let's like keep looking. Like we might strike out more, and then that can seem discouraging. Like if we do like 6 more tests and all are negative or all don't like give us
That's
the
still
healing you want.
information.
Yeah.
Exactly. It's still information because it's a puzzle. So like, don't let that be discouraging, but if
Right.
anything, it's refining our search.
Right.
And you're complex, clearly. That's why like no one's been able to figure it out. So let's keep figuring it out.
If you like, I've experienced this again through my wife's healthcare journey, but have you increased like in your just awe? And I'm sure this is such a softball answer for you, but like when I learn just a little bit more about like how God made our bodies, like it just makes me want to worship. Like I'm just like so like blown away by how complex he made us and like
Intricate.
without even breaking a sweat. Like, and we're still discovering new things every single day about like the complexities of the human body. Is that like, I feel like you have to like experience that on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Like,
I think it's overwhelming, I would say, how intricate and intentional like the body is. And I feel like as you learn more about it and you realize how much it makes sense, it worships the Lord and is satisfying in the Lord in the sense that he's so intentional and like he thought about these details and it works. And it's like satisfying to finally understand a concept. So if you're like trying to understand like I'm a metabolic cycle, like in the body, like this causes this to happen, which causes this to happen, which causes this to happen. It's like, wow, that is so satisfying. Like there was like a start and an end and an intention. And then you're like, oh my gosh, like the Lord actually cares about detail and like, and like the organization and like the fulfillment or like this causes this, which causes this.
It's not chaos.
It's not chaos.
it's such a
planned.
smart design.
It's all organized. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like,
It's
Lord,
so
you're so smart.
Yeah.
Right.
That's so good. I have another question. How have you seen, I think there's like, and this is maybe more of like a philosophical approach, but I'm interested to hear your thought, but like a lot of times people either elevate the importance of the body and the physical or the opposite, the spiritual and the body isn't important. How have you seen like the tie between soul and body with like what you do?
Yeah. I would say from a like medicine side of things, both interact with each other. Like they both play off of each other. So if you're looking for like a mind body, if mind, you're looking at things like anxiety, depression, like whatnot, like taking care of your body actually changes your mental health, like from just an anatomy, physiology, like
chemical level. Yeah.
Right. Exactly. So there's like rationale that if you're going to even like keep your mind smart, like you need to take care of your body too. And, but then I would say from a spiritual perspective, like, because what you were saying, like some people are like, as long like spiritually take care of yourself, spiritually take care of your mind, and the body's like just vanity, or vice versa. People spend too much time taking care of their body that they don't even pay attention to their spiritual side of things. So I would say that there's just like anything, there's like a balance of it. Like I think you need one to do the other one well. So if you are, I don't know, if you're just like developing yourself spiritually and spending your time with the Lord, like obviously at the end of the day, that is the most important. Like you have to be one with the Lord. You have to spend time with him. You have to be intimate with him.
And our
You
bodies
have to-
are finite.
Yes.
Ultimately,
Right.
like,
So you don't want to fall into something where it's like, it is vanity, like driven and, just even selfish. It's really quickly, like you're like lifting for the sake of sculpting yourself or to look a certain way.
It's prideful. Yeah.
Yeah, it's prideful, or even like you could take your nutrition so much that's really fear driving you.
yeah.
You know, because so if you're like, I'm only eating salads every day because I'm so fearful of everything else bad that's going to happen to me. Well, I don't think that's healthy either, because if the Lord calls you to go be a missionary in whatever country and you're limited in your like food like options, well then that's what you're gonna have to do.
And he'll take care of you.
And he'll take care of you. Exactly. Yeah. So it's like one of those things of, I think if we're in a position where it's like, I have the option to eat McDonald's or I have the option to eat like a salad.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's wise. And I think it's also like healthy. And I think there's also a part of worship in it that I'm going to choose the thing that's going to be good for me and take care of me. And I'm not going to just give in to my like gluttony or give in to like my desire for like whatever, like sugar or whatever it is that's going to ultimately hurt me. So I don't know if that
it
really
honors the Lord, like because of your knowledge of like what he's done with your body.
Yeah.
You're like, Lord, like, thank you for this body. I want to steward it well.
Right.
You know?
Right.
It's a temple.
Right.
Come back to that scripture.
Right.
But yeah.
Have you had any like specific, I guess like maybe even like less big picture, like specific instances where you've seen that connection like evident in your work? Or has it been pretty like, how long have you been working there first off?
Like a couple months.
A few months?
Well, yeah. Like
Okay.
December I
Yeah.
started.
Okay. So there's still like a long way to go, of course,
Yes.
but like, I don't know. I just feel like in that setting would be such an interesting place to
Yeah.
notice that connection. I
Yeah.
don't know if there's been any moments
Right.
like that
I will say,
specifically
I think
without
that,
breaking HIPAA.
right.
Just kidding.
I would say that it does reveal, I think how you take care of your body reveals in some ways how you believe, like what you believe about yourself. So I think even what I was saying about like how some people are really healthy, but it's really fear driven. But vice versa, like there's components, if you're treating someone holistically, like you do have to take in consideration the mind, body, and spirit. And you have to take into consideration like mentally, how are they doing? And emotionally, how are they doing? And like, what do they believe about themselves? I think sometimes people don't take care of themselves because they really want to punish themselves in some ways. Like that's one example. Or like I said, there's the fear thing. But I do think that there's components of like, do you believe you're strong enough to overcome this addiction you have? Or
they don't think they deserve it. So
Yeah.
they continue on the same,
Right.
they give themselves what they think they deserve. And
Right.
if that's binge eating or whatever, like
Right.
it's not for the better.
Right.
Yeah.
Or it's like this level of like, I feel better. Like I have nothing else to live for, but like to eat, or like this, I don't know. It's complex. So I feel like it's,
I'm sorry. It's a very like complex thing.
yeah.
It's also like comfort too.
Yeah. There's
You know?
comfort in it. And, there's like, I even heard someone speak on it of like, sometimes you have to work if you're like trying to convince people that they're worth fighting for again. I think that's a good example of it.
Yeah.
Like sometimes patients are like, I've just like developed, I've made agreements with this disorder. Like I've made agreements that
They've resigned.
You've
Yeah.
accepted it.
They've
Yeah.
accepted it and it's part of them. Like it's part of their identity. Like
Yeah.
I've always been sick. I'll always be sick.
Right.
I can't
Like,
improve it.
Yeah.
It's negative self-talk and negative lies
Right.
that they keep living in.
Right. And then they think they like deserve it sometimes. And then you don't. And then there's like the fear component too of like, what would I hold on to if I like didn't find so much of my identity like in this because I've been sick for so long? Or
Is God mad at me?
yeah, that's another thing. There's like a whole teaching like medical teaching, not like biblical teaching on that concept though of sometimes people's like, truthfully, they have like this inability to experience certain levels of healing in their body or recovery in their body. Let's say it that way.
Because they don't think,
Yeah, because they feel like they deserve this, like that they're not, that it's like payback for all the sin that they've had in their life, which is like super interesting, especially when you hear people teaching on it who aren't Christians. But it makes sense.
Karma.
Yeah. Like even if it's subconscious, but it's like, well, I could never stop eating cake and now I have diabetes and this is like my reality and it's my own fault. And like, I did this to myself and therefore like I have to suffer kind of. And
Right.
I think that I'm only just scratching the surface with revelation on it, but I think that it is, I don't know. I think it's an interesting
Yeah.
correlation.
It's definitely you can only help someone as much as they want to help themselves.
Well, I feel like just my experience with like church, and of course church is probably a place where like the spiritual should be elevated, and like that's one of the places to like recenter on your spirits, right? I mean, it's not like you're going to a gym or you're going to your doctor or anything like that. Like you're going to it's like holistic medicine for your soul. But I do think that like that culture can, we can easily twist that and turn around and do things that don't make sense with the way that God designed our bodies. Of course, there's different convictions of the Spirit, but I don't know, especially in like America being so obese and unhealthy like never before. There is a level of like, you are okay and loved as you are, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't like try to improve or strive for better physically and spiritually in any aspect of your life. Because we are ultimately like, I think people look at themselves as static, and we are ultimately like always dynamic, right? We're always either moving forward or backwards in whatever it is. We're not the same every day. Like we wake up every day and we're different. So I think it's like you said, a way that people view themselves, view the world, and people that look at the world in a static way tend to be more like pessimistic and like nihilistic and like nothing matters because like it is what it is.
Right.
It's the buzzword, right? Like
set in motion.
Not like it could be what, something else.
I think about like your body is a place where the Holy Spirit resides, and again, like stewarding that
physically.
Well. Like, absolutely. And God has made our physical bodies like for a reason. Yeah.
And of course, it's not to shame anyone who's struggling or to bully or put people down. It's really a message of empowerment and love.
Right.
And of course it should be spoken about in such way, like, and compassion, not just like like, it's easy for me to say, because I don't really have to like worry about it too much, because that like how I'm made. And some people like have the same exact lifestyle as me and like look differently or feel differently. And so realizing that is like, it's easy for me to say, but it doesn't mean it's not true.
It's also like, I talked about this shortly after it happened when we recorded the podcast. I had a kidney stone in the summer, and like came out of nowhere. Like I have no like record of that. Like it just like happened. And I think I was just really dehydrated and was running too much in the summer. But that was terrifying. It was the most pain I've ever felt in my life. I was literally on all fours, like begging for the Lord to like do something, because I didn't know like what to do. Like it felt like my insides were on fire and being ripped apart. So, but then even like going into the hospital, I was very overwhelmed with like, these people are here for me. Like, like their whole job and day almost revolves around me and like caring for me, and how like humbling that was to like receive that. Cause I'm very much just like, I don't love asking for help, as most of us probably don't. And that we want to do it ourselves and like have everything all together. And I'm definitely guilty of that. And it's like how humbling it is to like be in a spot
to be weak,
to be so weak where like, I have no idea like what is going on. Like I feel like I'm actually dying. Like that isn't like an understatement of the amount of pain that I was in. And like, I'm like, I have no idea what to do. Like I need help, like being so desperate, like in that sense, physically. I've never experienced anything like that. Yeah. And how overwhelming and like humbling it was to be like, all these people are here for me. Like they genuinely care and they want to make it okay. Like they want to take pain away, or, they have my best interest in mind is the bottom line.
Yeah. We don't like weakness. We don't like feeling.
Absolutely not.
Feeling helpless.
Yeah.
No, that's good. That's a really good reminder, and makes me want to go work out more.
Well, it's something
man, I shouldn't have had that ice cream yesterday.
This is Amanda's line, but it's like concerning your health, you either pay for it now or you pay for it later.
Yeah.
Which is so true.
Yeah.
It made me get a gym membership.
Did it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
It's like, I know how to work out. I know how to take care of myself, and I'm just sitting at my desk video editing all day. Right. So I can also feel like my body needs it. Like I know it's good for me, but I can also feel something being like, hey, you need to like move. And like,
it's crazy the difference it actually does make, like right away.
Yeah.
Like if you're feeling depressed, or, it's like a cloudy day and you haven't done much because you've been inside all day, to like go, even if it's rainy, go out for a walk or something, just get your blood moving. And then you just like feel better about life.
Yeah.
It's like kind of a crazy phenomenon.
It is wild. So knowing what you know now, as you've just started this journey, like on this, has your, like, what is kind kind of your long-term vision, or is there a different spot that you want to be in again? Like going overseas, going to extremely rural, like underdeveloped countries. Is that still something that you want to take this to, or has that shifted to a different area or aspect?
Yeah, I would say I've been too humbled to really long for anything other than to just be where the Lord wants me to be. And I think I've just learned to rest in greater confidence that he's going to bring things about without my ability to even like make it happen, I guess. So I would say vision wise, right now I'm in a place where I just want to keep learning and understanding the body. And I just want to remain in a place of compassion. And I think I just love being able to sit with people and hear them out and then be able to explore ways that we could do something better or to help them feel better. So big picture wise, I think that's
you are where you are.
Yeah, I am where I am. And if the
Mm.
Lord changes that trajectory, I think that I trust that it's going to be really beautiful. So, yeah.
I mean, it is like you are already living out that testament, moving from South Carolina here, having this position open, seeing your passion for it, all within the time span of when things happened as they did. Like you graduated and then this opened up, and it's like the Lord knows what he's doing.
Right. He does.
Which is super cool.
What like would you on a more practical level like leave the listener with advice to put you on the spot? Like what is maybe something that just sticks out to you, maybe a theme that just keeps coming up that like you would want to impart with what you know on somebody who's listening?
Wisdom.
Yeah. I would say one thing is that I don't want any of this to come across in a way that we should like disrespect like healthcare. Like they know what they're doing, and there's like extensive, like even like what you said, like those, like they're there sacrificing their time and their life to serve you. And we still need to honor and respect like that, which, you know, like providers like teach us or say, like, it's not us against other like providers, you know? So I think that there's like, we still have to make sure that even in the midst of advocating for ourselves, we honor like those and still hear what they have to say. But I will say that I just think that the alternative approaches are more like real than I realized they were. Like there's more science behind them than I thought there was. And there's more like clinical significance than I thought there was. And it's something worth pursuing, and it's something worth giving some time to, and like researching about, or trying, or at least trialing and see if you feel better like on it, or if it really does make a difference for you. Yeah, because it works. It's crazy. People are like coming in like 1 minute they're like completely shut down, like their entire body's failing them. Like everything's wrong. Nothing makes any sense. Like no one has any answers for them. And then just today, even I had a patient say that she's like, it's amazing. Like she's like never thought her life would be like put back into a position like this where she can function and like take care of her kids and like do her like ADLs, her activities of daily living, and just function normally. And it's just crazy. It's blowing my mind actually, like the difference in people. So
night and day.
I would say just don't write it off. Like do your research. Don't just get like tied into like trends, because like you hear
there are fads for sure.
Yes, there are fads. So if you're gonna jump on a fad, make sure there's like research with it, or do your research.
Think for yourself.
Yeah. Think for yourself. So.
ADL.
Yeah.
There's so many acronyms in medicine. It makes me laugh. I always make fun of Amanda for that, because she starts talking to me. I'm like, you just said 4 acronyms and I have no idea what that means.
A, B, C, D.
Yeah. I'm like, your elemental P, what? But I guess they're in film too. You just don't realize it because you know what they mean.
Right.
But there's probably more in medicine. There's so many weird words and everything like that. But yeah, that's so good. Well, thank you so much for coming on and expressing, you know, your story. And it sometimes feels like weird talking about your journey and hoping other people will gain something from it. But that's just how humans work, like testimony and like relating to what you've learned. And even if people aren't in medicine, or maybe they are and are going through similar things, then a lot of times we don't realize what the Lord will do through our story. So thanks for coming on.
Super
and sharing.
encouraging.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you as well to Josh from Local Legend Recording for letting us record here as always. Thanks to Steven.
Big thanks to Steven at Quickwater.
Quickwater.
Go check out Quickwater, downtown Rockford, Michigan. Go say hi to Steven because he's doing big things. He's got big plans. I'm on kind of the inside scoop with him of what he's doing with the shop, and he's got some dude's a dreamer. He's got some good ideas.
He's a mover.
He's a shaker.
He's a quiet
gentleman.
Pistol.
Okay.
No, he's like just quietly moving the world. Quiet steadfastness.
Yeah. Yep.
Check out the Boxes Humans Made by Gable Price and Friends. That's
dude.
That's my we do a record time segment where we just recommend our music we're listening to.
Yeah.
So I just jumped into it without an explanation.
That's great. That's great.
If you have anything you're listening to, you could share it. Otherwise, it's totally okay. What music do you like to listen to?
I listen to MBL worship.
Okay.
Primarily. So upper room, you know.
Well, we'll throw that on the record time playlist. That's no problem at all.
Yeah,
perfect.
It's great. I don't have one.
All right, sweet. Well, thanks again, guys, for listening and joining us today.
Yeah.
And we'll catch you next time. Peace.
Classic.